Life was pretty good for Anna and me. We had been together since college, meeting when we were both wide-eyed freshmen trying to figure out our lives. Over the years, we grew closer, eventually getting married when we were both 25. Now, at 38, we had built a solid life together. We had decent jobs, a comfortable home, and a pretty good routine. Anna had taken over her father's business after he passed away, and she was doing an amazing job with it, earning even more than I did. I was proud of her accomplishments and happy to support her in any way I could. For a while, everything seemed perfect. We were the couple our friends envied, always in sync, rarely arguing, and genuinely enjoying each other's company. We were a team, balancing our careers and personal lives with a kind of effortless grace that I took for granted. But then, things started to change. It was subtle at first, little things that could easily be dismissed. Anna began staying late at work more often than usual, citing increased responsibilities and the need to oversee certain projects personally. I understood running a business was demanding, and I had no reason to doubt her dedication. Our weekends, which used to be filled with leisurely breakfasts and spontaneous outings, became less frequent. Anna seemed distracted, often lost in thought, and her phone never left her side. I remember one Saturday morning distinctly. I woke up a bit later than usual and leaned over to give Anna a good morning kiss. She mumbled, "Leonard, let me sleep. I've had a rough week." I chuckled and let her be, heading downstairs to make breakfast. As I cooked, I thought about how exhausted she must be, managing so much at work. I wanted to surprise her with breakfast in bed, something we hadn't done in a while. But when I brought the tray up, she was already out of bed and in the shower, the door locked, something she rarely did. "Hey, breakfast is ready," I called out, trying to sound cheerful. "I'll be down in a minute," she replied, her voice muffled by the sound of running water. Anna came downstairs and we ate together, but the usual light-hearted conversation was missing. I asked about her work, and she gave me short, vague answers, clearly not in the mood to discuss it. I didn't push her, assuming she was just tired. As weeks passed, these small instances piled up. One night, as I was doing the dishes, I noticed Anna's phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. I glanced at it out of habit and saw a message from a name I didn't recognize, David. The preview showed a simple "Can T wait to see you tomorrow." My heart sank a bit, but I brushed it off. David was a common name, and it could easily be a business associate. Still, something nagged at me. I had never heard her mention a David before. Over the next few days, I kept an eye on things. Anna was still distracted, often smiling at her phone, but when I asked who she was texting, she would quickly change the subject or give a generic answer. I started feeling a knot of anxiety in my stomach that I couldn't shake. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, I brought it up. "Hey, Anna, is everything okay? You seem a bit distant lately." She looked at me, her expression a mix of surprise and defensiveness. "What do you mean? Everything is fine. Just a lot on my plate with work, that's all." I nodded, not wanting to press too hard. "Okay, I just wanted to make sure. You know I am here if you need to talk about anything." She gave me a quick peck on the cheek and said, "Thanks, Leonard, I appreciate it. Really, everything's just fine." But it wasn't tea. I could feel the distance growing between us, and I didn't know what to do. I told myself it was just a rough patch, that we'd get through it like we always did. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The feeling of unease that had been gnawing at me for weeks finally reached its breaking point one Friday evening. I had wrapped up work a bit early, looking forward to a quiet night in with Anna. But as I pulled into our driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked nearby. It was a sleek black sedan, the kind you don't usually see in our neighborhood. A cold shiver ran down my spine, but I tried to stay calm. Maybe it was just a friend or a business associate of Anna's. As I approached the front door, I heard faint noises coming from inside the house, laughter and voices, one distinctly male. Opening the door quietly, I stepped into the hallway. The sounds grew louder, more intimate. I moved cautiously towards the living room, my heart pounding. The sight that greeted me was like a punch to the gut. There, on our couch, was Anna, entwined with a man I recognized from her workplace, David. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't notice me at first. The rage and betrayal surged through me, and I couldn't contain it any longer. "What the hell is going on here?" I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. Anna and David jumped apart, scrambling to cover themselves. Anna's face turned a ghastly shade of white. "Leonard, I get the hell out of my house," I roared at David. He fumbled with his clothes, not daring to look me in the eye, and bolted for the door. Anna tried to reach out to me, but I backed away, disgusted. "Leonard, please, let me explain," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. I stood there, breathing heavily, trying to rein in my fury. "Explain? What could you possibly explain, Anna? I saw everything. You were cheating on me, in our home, on our couch. How long has this been going on?" She sobbed, her hands shaking. "It was a mistake, Leonard. I am so sorry. It didn't mean anything. Please just listen to me." "A mistake?" I spat out the words. "How many times, Anna? How many times have you brought him here?" She crumpled to the floor, her face buried in her hands. "Just a few times. It was stupid, I know. I love you, Leonard. I don't want to lose you. Please, don't do this." I felt a sickening mix of anger and heartbreak. "You love me? Is this how you show it? By screwing some guy on our couch? I can believe I trusted you. Please, Leonard, I'll do anything. I'll quit my job. I'll never see him again." "We can fix this," she begged, crawling towards me. But I couldn't bear to look at her. "Fix this? How can we fix this? You've shattered everything. Our trust. Our marriage. I don't even know who you are anymore." She clung to my legs, her voice desperate. "I was lonely, Leonard. You were always working, and I felt neglected. I know it's no excuse, but I was weak. Please, don't let this end us." I shook her off, my mind racing. Divorce seemed like the only option, the only way to salvage any shred of dignity I had left. "We are done, Anna. I can't do this anymore. I am filing for divorce." Her eyes widened in horror. "No, please, don't say that. We can go to counseling, work through this. I love you, Leonard. I can lose you." But I had made up my mind. The betrayal was too deep, too raw. It's too late for that. I'll stay in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow, I'll start making arrangements. As I walked away, I heard her sobs echoing behind me, but I didn't look back. The woman I had loved, the life we had built together, it all felt like a cruel joke. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, but one thing was clear: our marriage was over. The next day, the house was eerily quiet. I had spent a restless night in the guest room, replaying the events of the previous evening in my mind. The betrayal, the anger, the raw heartbreak, it all felt like a relentless storm battering my soul. Anna had been crying all night, her muffled sobs seeping through the walls, adding to my turmoil. As the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. We needed to talk, to figure out the next steps, no matter how painful it might be. I braced myself and stepped out into the living room, finding Anna sitting on the couch where I had caught her and David, now a place of bitter memories. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, her face pale and drawn. She looked up as I entered, her expression a mix of hope and despair. "Leonard, can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, sitting down across from her. "All right, Anna, talk." She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I know I've hurt you in the worst possible way. I know you don't trust me anymore, and you have every right to feel that way. But please, let me try to explain." I folded my arms, my face a mask of sternness. "Go on." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "When I took over my father's business, it was overwhelming. I was under so much pressure and I felt like I was drowning. You were always so supportive, but I felt like I was losing you to your own work. We stopped communicating, stopped connecting. I was lonely, Leonard. And then David came along, and he made me feel wanted, attractive. I know it is no excuse, but I was weak. I made a terrible mistake. I listened, my heart heavy. Anna, why didn't you talk to me? We could have worked through it together. Instead, you chose to betray me." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know, and I regret it every single day. I was stupid and selfish. But I love you, Leonard. I love what we have, our life together. I don't want to throw it all away." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "How can I believe anything you say now? How can I trust you after what you did?" She moved closer, her eyes pleading. "I'll do anything to prove to you that I'm committed to us. I'll quit my job, change my phone number, cut all ties with David. We can go to counseling, rebuild our trust. I just need one more chance. Please, Leonard." Dante give up on us. Her desperation was palpable, and despite my anger, I felt a flicker of something, a longing to believe her, to hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way back to each other. "Anna, you broke my heart." It's not just about forgiving you. It is about rebuilding something that feels completely shattered. She nodded, her gaze never leaving mine. I know it won't be easy, but I am willing to do whatever it takes. I want to start over, to build a stronger foundation. I want us to be happy again, to be the team we once were. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her words hanging between us. Part of me wanted to walk away, to escape the pain and betrayal, but another part, a quieter yet insistent part, wanted to believe in second chances, in the possibility of healing. I took a deep breath, my voice steady but filled with emotion. All right, Anna, we'll try. But know this, it's going to be hard. You'll have to earn back my trust, and it won't happen overnight. We'll take it one day at a time, starting from the beginning. Her face lit up with a glimmer of hope, and she nodded fervently. Thank you, Leonard. I promise you won't regret this. I'll do everything I can to make it right. As we sat there, a fragile new beginning started to take shape. It was a long road ahead, filled with uncertainty and challenges. But for the first time in what felt like forever, there was a tiny spark of hope. We had decided to try again, to rebuild what had been broken, and perhaps, just perhaps, we could find our way back to each other. Months passed, and little by little, Anna and I started to piece our lives back together. The initial weeks were incredibly difficult, filled with tension and awkwardness. Trust was fragile, and every interaction felt like walking on eggshells. But we were committed to trying, and slowly, we began to find our rhythm again. True to her word, Anna quit her job and severed all ties with David. She threw herself into repairing our relationship with a fervor I hadn't seen in years. We started going to counseling, which helped us open up to each other in ways we hadn't before. The counselor guided us through our pain, anger, and resentment, teaching us to communicate better and rebuild the trust that had been shattered. We began to spend more time together, rediscovering the little things that had first drawn us to each other. We went for long walks, cooked dinner together, and even picked up old hobbies we had once enjoyed but let fall by the wayside. It felt like we were dating again, relearning each other's habits and quirks, reconnecting on a deeper level. One of the turning points was a holiday we decided to take. It had been years since our last vacation work. Life and responsibilities always seemed to get in the way. But this time, we made it a priority. We booked a week-long trip to a small beach town, a place neither of us had been before. It felt like a fresh start, a blank canvas where we could paint new memories. The trip was everything we needed, and more. The ocean's rhythmic waves seemed to wash away our worries, and the salty air felt like a balm for our wounded hearts. We spent our days lounging on the beach, exploring the town, and savoring the local cuisine. At night, we would sit on the balcony of our small hotel room, talking for hours under the starlit sky. There was one evening in particular that stands out. We had found a secluded spot on the beach, away from the few other tourists, and laid out a blanket. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange, Anna leaned her head on my shoulder. For the first time in a long while, I felt a genuine sense of peace. "I've missed this," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the gentle crashing of the waves. "Me too," I replied, squeezing her hand gently. We stayed there until the stars came out, talking about everything and nothing. The intimacy we had once taken for granted began to feel natural again. We laughed, reminisced about the early days of our relationship, and made plans for the future. It was as if the weight of the past few months had been lifted, if only for a little while. By the end of the trip, I realized something profound I had started to forget about the incident. It wasn't that the betrayal had completely vanished from my mind. It was still there, a scar that would always be part of our story. But it no longer dominated my every thought. The anger and hurt had started to fade, replaced by a cautious optimism and a renewed sense of connection. As we packed our bags to head home, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and hope. Sadness that our idyllic escape was coming to an end, but hope for the future we were building together. We had a long way to go, and there would undoubtedly be challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long time, I believed we could make it. Our journey was far from over, but we were on the right path. We had rediscovered each other and the love that had always been there, buried under layers of pain and resentment. The holiday had reminded us of the joy we could still find in each other, and as we headed back to our everyday lives, I carried that hope with me. The incident was no longer a looming shadow, but a part of our past. We were focused on the present and the future, ready to face whatever came our way together. A few months had passed since our holiday, and life had settled into a comfortable routine. Anna and I continued to work on our relationship, and things seemed to be improving steadily. The scars from her betrayal were still there, but they had faded enough that I could believe in the future we were building together. One Friday evening, I decided to surprise Anna with a special dinner. I spent the afternoon shopping for ingredients and meticulously preparing her favorite dishes. By the time everything was ready, the table was set with candles, and a bottle of her favorite wine was breathing. Anna had mentioned she might be a bit late, wrapping up some work for a project she had taken on as a consultant since leaving her father's company. I didn't think much of it, but as the hours ticked by, my concern began to grow. She wasn't answering my calls or texts, which was unusual. At first, I tried to stay calm, telling myself she was probably just caught up in something important. But as the clock edged past 8, I started to worry. Memories of the past, of David and the betrayal, began to creep into my mind. I shook them off, reminding myself that we had moved past that she was committed to making things right. But when 9 o'clock rolled around and still no word from Anna, I couldn't shake the growing anxiety. I glanced at my phone, my finger hovering over the app that showed the location of trusted contacts. It was something we had agreed to use for peace of mind after everything that had happened. My heart pounded as I opened the app. The little icon representing Anna's phone blinked into view, but it wasn't at her office. It was far from it, in a part of town she had no reason to be in. My hands began to shake, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. Trying to stay calm, I grabbed my keys and headed for the car. The drive felt like an eternity, my mind racing with 1,000 worst-case scenarios. I couldn't believe this was happening again, not after everything we had been through. When I finally arrived at the location, my heart sank. Anna's car was parked outside a modest house, one I didn't recognize. It wasn't David's place, but that didn't matter. The sick feeling in my stomach told me everything I needed to know. I sat in the car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The betrayal, the anger, the heartbreak, it all came rushing back in a flood of emotion. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was right there in front of me. After what felt like an eternity, I got out of the car and approached the house. My mind was a blur, my emotions a tangled mess of confusion and rage. I had trusted her again, opened my heart to her, and it felt like she had shattered it all over again. I stood there, staring at the house, trying to gather the courage to confront her, to find out what was really going on. But deep down, I already knew. The trust we had painstakingly rebuilt had been broken once more, and I was left standing in the ruins of our relationship, unsure of what to do next. I stood outside the house, heart pounding and mind racing. I knew I had to confront this situation head on, even if it meant facing another devastating betrayal. Taking a deep breath, I mustered the courage and knocked on the door. A few moments later, the door creaked open, and a man appeared. He was shirtless, wearing only a pair of Anna's, his hair disheveled as if he had been in the middle of something. His eyes widened slightly as he took in my appearance. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone wary. I stood there, unable to speak, a storm of emotions raging inside me. Anger, disbelief, sadness all fought for dominance. My silence seemed to unnerve him. "What do you want?" he repeated, his voice more insistent this time. Then I saw her. Anna appeared in the hallway behind him, her hair tousled, wearing only a robe. The look of shock on her face confirmed everything. Without a word, I pushed past the man and stepped into the house, my mind barely processing what was happening. "Hey, you can just barge in here," the man shouted, his voice rising. "I'll call the cops." But I was beyond caring. My focus was solely on Anna, who stood frozen, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and guilt. "What the hell is going on, Anna?" I demanded, my voice trembling with rage. The man, realizing who I was, took a step back. "You are her husband, aren't you?" he muttered, more to himself than to me. He quickly retreated to another room, leaving Anna and me alone in the hallway. Anna opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "Don't even try to explain," I said, my voice cold. "After everything we've been through, after all the promises, you are doing this again?" She looked at me, and her expression shifted from guilt to defiance. "Leonard, you don't understand," she began, her voice hardening. You never understood. This isn't just about you or us. I needed something more, something you couldn't give me. I felt like I had been slapped. Something more? I echoed, my voice rising. What more could you possibly need? We went to counseling. We rebuilt our relationship from the ground up. I trusted you again, Anna, and this is how you repay me? She crossed her arms, her demeanor icy. You think just because we went on a few vacations and had some therapy sessions that everything was magically fixed? I was suffocating, Leonard. You smothered me with your constant need for reassurance, your endless questioning. I needed space, I needed freedom. Freedom? I spat out the word. Freedom to cheat? Freedom to destroy our marriage again? How can you stand there and blame me for your own betrayal? Anna's eyes flashed with anger. You never saw the signs, Leonard. You never paid attention to what I needed. You were so busy being the perfect husband that you forgot to be my partner. I needed excitement, passion, something that reminded me I was still alive. The sheer audacity of her words left me momentarily speechless. So this is my fault? You were saying I drove you to this? She shrugged, a cruel smile playing on her lips. Maybe if you'd been more attentive, more exciting, we wouldn't be here. But you weren't. And here we are. The realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just a mistake or a moment of weakness on her part. This was a deliberate, calculated decision to hurt me, to seek out something she felt I couldn't provide. You're unbelievable, I said, my voice shaking with barely contained fury. After everything, you still have the nerve to stand there and blame me. We were done, Anna, for good this time. I turned to leave, my mind made up. There was no going back from this. As I walked out of the house, the man reappeared, watching me with a mixture of pity and apprehension. I didn't spare him a second glance. My focus was on getting away from the toxic mess that my marriage had become. The drive home was a blur of tears and rage, but one thing was crystal clear: I was done being Anna's victim. This time, there would be no second chances, no rebuilding. The chapter of my life with her was over, and I was ready to close the book for good. The days following that brutal confrontation were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt like I was walking through a fog, the betrayal replaying in my mind like a broken record. Anna's accusations, her blatant disregard for our marriage, had left me seething with a mix of pain and fury. I needed an outlet, a way to take back some semblance of control over my life. It was during one of those restless days that I decided to call up an old friend, Michael. We hadn't seen each other in a while, but he was always someone I could count on. I needed to get out, clear my head, and maybe, just maybe, drown my sorrows in something other than the silence of my empty house. Leonard, it's been too long, Michael said when he picked up the phone. What is going on? I told him everything: Anna's betrayal, the confrontation, and the aftermath. Michael listened patiently, occasionally interjecting with sympathetic murmurs. When I finally finished, he suggested we meet up at a bar downtown, a place we used to frequent back in the day. Sounds like you need a night out, man, he said. Let us catch up, have a few drinks, and forget about all this crap for a while. I agreed, desperate for any distraction from the chaos that had become my life. That evening, I found myself walking into the familiar dimly lit bar, the hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses providing a welcome reprieve from my thoughts. Michael was already there, a drink in hand, waving me over with a grin. Leonard, good to see you, buddy. Let's get you a drink. We sat at the bar, and I ordered a whiskey, feeling the burn as I took the first sip. We talked about everything: old times, work, life, but eventually, the conversation circled back to Anna. I just can't believe she did it again, I said, shaking my head. After everything we went through. Michael nodded, his expression thoughtful. Some people just don't appreciate what they have, Leonard. She doesn't deserve you, man. You deserve better. As the night wore on and the drinks flowed, I felt a shift within me. The anger and hurt began to morph into something more primal, a desire for revenge. Why should Anna be the only one to find solace in the arms of another? Why should I be the one left to pick up the pieces alone? Michael, I said, a new resolve in my voice. I need to move on. I need to do something for myself. I think I need to let loose tonight. He raised an eyebrow, a knowing smile spreading across his face. Well, my friend, you've come to the right place. Let's have some fun. The bar was crowded, and as the night deepened, so did the energy around us. Michael and I moved to a table closer to the dance floor, where the music pulsed with a seductive beat. It wasn't too long before a group of women joined our table, introduced by a mutual acquaintance of Michael S. One woman in particular caught my eye. She was striking, with long dark hair and a confident, playful demeanor. Her name was Jessica, and as we talked, I found myself drawn to her in a way I hadn't felt in years. Jessica leaned in, her voice soft but playful. "So, Leonard, what brings you out tonight?" I hesitated for a moment, then decided to be honest. Honestly, trying to forget about my soon-to-be ex-wife and her infidelities. She gave me a sympathetic look but didn't dwell on it. "Well, you're in the right place for a fresh start." As the night wore on, Jessica and I danced, laughed, and drank more than I should have. The chemistry between us was undeniable, and the barriers I had built around my heart began to crumble. I felt alive, free from the weight of betrayal, if only for a moment. Eventually, we found ourselves outside the bar, the cool night air a stark contrast to the warmth of her touch. "Would you like to come back to my place?" Jessica asked, her eyes meeting mine with a mixture of invitation and understanding. I hesitated, but only for a moment. This was about reclaiming some part of myself that had been lost in the wreckage of my marriage. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "I'd like that." We took a cab to her apartment, and as soon as we were inside, the electricity between us sparked into a full-blown flame. It was different from anything I had experienced with Anna. There was no baggage, no history, just the raw, immediate connection of two people seeking solace in each other. The night passed in a blur of passion and release. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of control over my destiny, a sense of liberation from the chains of my past. As I lay next to Jessica, the morning light beginning to filter through the curtains, I realized that while this act of revenge didn't erase the pain, it did remind me of my own worth and the possibilities that lay ahead. I wasn't defined by Anna's betrayal. I was free to forge a new path, one where I was the master of my own happiness. And that night with Jessica was the first step toward reclaiming my life. The morning after my night with Jessica, I drove home with a clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. I had to confront Anna one last time, to tell her everything, to make it clear that there was no turning back. This was the end of our marriage, and we needed to move on. When I arrived, Anna was in the kitchen sipping her coffee. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Where have you been?" she asked, her tone cold. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "I need to talk to you, Anna. About last night." She set her cup down, crossing her arms. "What about it?" "I went out with Michael," I began, meeting her gaze head-on. "I needed to clear my head after everything that has happened. And I ended up spending the night with someone." For a moment, there was silence. Then her face contorted with rage. "You did what?" she spat, standing up. "You went and slept with someone else?" "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "I did. I did exactly what you did. I needed to feel something, anything, other than the pain and betrayal you caused." Anna's eyes blazed with anger. "You hypocrite! You stood there judging me, and then you turn around and do the same thing? How dare you?" "I acted like you, Anna," I shot back, my own anger rising. "I wanted you to understand what it feels like to be on the receiving end of betrayal, to feel the hurt and the anger and the emptiness." She scoffed, shaking her head. "You think this makes you better than me? You think this somehow justifies what you did?" "I don't think it makes me better," I replied. "But it does make me realize that this marriage is beyond saving. We are both hurt and angry, and this cycle of betrayal and revenge is only going to destroy us further." Her face twisted with bitterness. "So that's just it? You're just going to walk away?" "I think it is best for both of us," I said, my voice softer now. "We can keep doing this to each other. We need to move on, to find happiness elsewhere." Anna's anger seemed to waver, replaced by a mix of frustration and resignation. "And what about everything we built? Our home, our life?" "We'll figure it out," I said. "We'll go through the process, divide everything fairly. But we can't keep pretending that this is a marriage worth saving. It's not." There was a long silence as we stared at each other, the weight of our shared history pressing down on us. Finally, Anna sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Maybe you're right," she said quietly. "Maybe it's time to let go." I nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. It is the only way we can both start fresh. We spent the rest of the day discussing the logistics, how to divide our assets, what the next steps would be. It was painful, but it was also a necessary step toward healing. By the end of the day, it was clear that we were both committed to moving forward separately. As I packed my bags, preparing to leave the house that had been our home, I felt a strange sense of liberation. This was the end of one chapter, but it was also the beginning of a new one, a chance to rebuild my life, to find happiness on my own terms. Before I left, I turned to Anna one last time. "I hope you find what you are looking for, Anna." "I really do." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I hope you do too, Leonard." With that, I walked out the door, leaving behind the remnants of a broken marriage. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was ready to start over, to create a life that was truly my own. And so, with a mixture of sorrow and anticipation, I stepped into the future, determined to make it a brighter one. It's been a few months since the divorce was finalized, and life has been a whirlwind of new beginnings and unexpected challenges. Starting over hasn't been easy, but it has been necessary. I've focused on rebuilding my life, finding solace in new routines, and slowly discovering who I am outside of my marriage to Anna. One afternoon, I was walking through the park near my new apartment, enjoying the crisp autumn air and the sound of leaves crunching underfoot. It was one of those rare moments of peace where the weight of the past seemed to lift just a little. I was lost in thought when I looked up and saw her Anna. She was sitting on a bench looking out at the small lake, a distant and contemplative expression on her face. My heart skipped a beat, a flood of mixed emotions washing over me. Anger, sadness, regret, and a pang of something I couldn't quite place. It had been months since we'd seen each other, and the sight of her brought everything rushing back. For a moment I considered turning around and walking away, but something kept me rooted to the spot. Maybe it was the need for closure, or perhaps a desire to prove to myself that I had moved on. Taking a deep breath, I approached her. "Anna," I said softly, coming to a stop a few feet away from her bench. She looked up, her eyes widening in surprise. "Leonard, hi." There was an awkward silence as we both took in the unexpected encounter. Finally, I gestured to the empty spot on the bench. "Mind if I sit?" She shook her head. "No, go ahead." I sat down, the distance between us feeling both vast and minuscule. "How have you been?" I asked, not really sure what else to say. Anna sighed, a small, rueful smile playing on her lips. "I've been okay, adjusting. You?" "Same," I replied. "It's been a lot to process. Starting over, figuring out what comes next." She nodded, her gaze drifting back to the lake. "I never expected to see you here. I thought you moved to a different part of town." "I did," I said. "Just needed a change of scenery. This park has always been one of my favorite places to think." Another silence settled between us, the weight of our shared history hanging in the air. Despite everything, there was still a part of me that felt connected to her, a part that remembered the good times, the love we once shared. "I am sorry, Leonard," she said suddenly, her voice breaking the quiet, "for everything. I know that doesn't change what happened, but I want you to know that I truly am sorry." I looked at her, seeing the genuine remorse in her eyes. "I know, Anna, and I'm sorry too, for my part in all of this. We both made mistakes." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I hope you find happiness, Leonard. You deserve it." "You too, Anna," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You too." As I walked away, a strange mix of emotions churned inside me. Seeing Anna had stirred up old wounds that were still healing, but it also brought a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. The pain of our past was still there, a dull ache that would likely linger for some time. But I was learning to live with it, to move forward one step at a time. Life after the divorce has been a journey of self-discovery and healing. Ivy started dating again, cautiously opening my heart to the possibility of new love. It's not easy, and there are days when the scars of the past feel too raw, but I remind myself that healing is a process, not a destination. The encounter with Anna was a reminder that while the past shapes us, it doesn't define us. We have the power to create new paths, to find new beginnings. And that is what I am determined to do, take each day as it comes and build a future that is truly my own.